everyone. I'm EJ and welcome to my Downtime. You're probably wondering who this other face is, and I would like to introduce you to my best friend Lori. We've known each other about 7 years. She's an author. She actually is a co-host on the podcast I do, Behind the Mask. So we've been working professionally for a while. We've known each other, like I said, for about 7 years, but only maybe in the last 3 or 4 have really professionally worked together as well. We were roommates at one point, then we separated households for a while, and now I've just recently moved back in with her. And when we started kind of toying with the interview idea, I thought Lori might actually be a better interviewer than I would be. So Lori is actually going to be doing the author interviews. We're calling it Lori's Corner. She'll be interviewing the authors that I've edited their books and helped self-publish, as well as other authors on our Elite 360 Publishing and Elite Public Group VIP list that have published prior to us starting Elite 360 Publishing. And so I just didn't want you guys to be confused as to why Lori was on my channel. But we've been friends for a long time. I'm looking forward to working with her, and I'm looking forward to having an extra set of eyes and extra set of ears when it comes to listening and interviewing. And I'll hop into some of the interviews depending on who it is, but we'll take that bridge, cross that bridge as we come to it, I guess they say. But I just wanted to introduce her, and I will make sure that her information for her social media is down in the description so you can check that out. But I hope you enjoy the first interview that we've got lined up. And yeah, you have anything to say?
Looking forward to being a part of the team. Thanks for having me.
Yep. Again, I'm EJ. Thanks for stopping by to my Downtime, and enjoy the interview. Bye.
Hello, everyone. I'm Lori Lee, and I am going to be collaborating with EJ's Downtime to do some interviews of authors for Elite 360 Publishing. So I have as a guest today, Steve Warmer. Welcome, Steve.
Hey, Lori. Thanks for having me. Great to be with you.
Great. It is so wonderful to actually meet you. I really enjoyed reading your book and found it just so helpful and very pertinent to a lot of the issues of today. So we're going to get some more into that, but I just wanted to say that off the top. And I was amazed. I really connected with you as a brother, as a friend. I felt like when I was reading it, I felt like I was with one of my brothers and that we were having a conversation, and because I love sports, and I've been in the ministry myself for many years, and I just felt so many connecting things. And so I really enjoyed, but was gratified by everything that I read. So having said that, maybe I'd like to start with asking you, how long have you been in the ministry?
Well, first of all, you're very, very kind with your words of encouragement. And that's why I wrote it for. And I'm so glad you connected it. I wondered about all the basketball in the introduction. I was like, I'm going to alienate a lot of female readers possibly here. So I'm glad to hear you say that.
I'm a Gonzaga fan through and through. So.
Oh, well, I'm actually a Kansas Jayhawk fan, and not bandwagon just because they won it. It goes back to 1988. So I'm sorry about y'all's bad luck this year, because I thought you guys were going to win it all.
I did too. Anyway, moving on.
But to answer your question, we went into the ministry, my wife and I did, in 2011. More as a volunteer basis. We were converted in the church in Nashville, Tennessee. And then after several years of serving in different capacities there in the church, we were asked to go encourage the church in Huntsville, which was more of a house church at the time, far as from an official capacity. But they had dreams and aspiration of being a church plant, which in my perspective, they were long overdue in being. So it's in the book, and I won't elaborate on it, but I was just sharing this with my kids last night, that literally after we adopted the kids, 3 at one time, for those of you that haven't read the book, We got them one weekend in April, and the very next weekend, one of the elders in Nashville approached us and said, would you like to go start serving in Huntsville? You don't have to move there because you got your jobs here in Nashville and we can't afford to pay you. You know, we'll cover your expenses and your lunch and that kind of thing. But we know you want to get your feet wet. And here's an opportunity to see if you guys really want to do it. You could preach every week, you know, et cetera, et cetera. So that was kind of how we started in 2011. And just one more humorous point to that. So like I said, adoption, 3 kids, one weekend, ministry starting the next weekend. Yes, I traded in my pickup truck for a minivan in between. So
yes, I love that portion. I love that because a lot of guys are like, never, never, never. It's not going to happen. I can't do that. And then they end up doing it. And it ends up being the best thing they ever did. But, you know, you can't tell them that beforehand.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
I totally get it. It's either the pickup truck or the sports car, you know, that is not suitable for family.
No,
so,
it's time to be practical for sure.
That's right. That's right. So how would you tell us maybe just a little bit about what specifically motivated you to write Rivers of Hope?
The interesting thing about that is shortly after the kids came into our home, it's such a, in my opinion, a mighty act of God. After 5 years of waiting and many miscarriages and many failed adoptions, that I said, I got to start documenting this. And I started to put an outline together probably late 2011, early 2012. And I think I allude to this in the book. I think just busyness with 3 kids, you know, ministry responsibilities, you know, just increased even more from there. And just insecurities and fear and just busyness. I just tabled it, to be honest with you. And I've got a professional coach that works with me on a lot of different things. And I've never asked him, hey, would you coach me on this book that I've got back here in my computer somewhere? But he knew it was there. And he would never pressure me, but he would nudge me. You still got that book in you, Steve. And he nudged me one particular session in late February or March. And I just said, you know what, I'm doing it. And then I wrote it in 3 weeks. So it was just there waiting to flow out of me. Now, of course, the whole process after that took a while. You know, that's learning what all goes into it. But yeah, that's how it all kind of came to be.
Wonderful. I heard that you recently baptized one of your sons. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
I will, of course. Daniel is my middle child and my oldest son, and he is almost 14, but he has done welcomes in Springfield, where we were for many years, when he was 7, 8 years old, and he's always loved to pray. He is very, very smart for his age, and he's just years ahead of what a kid his age should be. And so he went through the teen studies with a few brothers back in March, and then gave it a little bit of a rest due to their schedules. And then they picked back up, I think, in late April, and they studied with him like twice a week for 4 or 5 weeks. And so, yeah, he was baptized in a local lake here near Memphis. And it was a glorious day for sure. Thank you for asking about that.
You know, there is something very powerful about worshiping with our children, especially once they get to an age where they really, it becomes their worship mixed in with yours. I was there and to witness and be a part of my oldest son's baptism, and
awesome.
Brings tears to my eyes.
That's
so
awesome. Yeah.
Maybe one more personal little thing, maybe share a little fun fact about yourself that you didn't share in the book.
I was going to be prepared for this, but I'm not close enough to give the visual example. I'll fall short of saying I play it well, but I doodle with the bass guitar.
Ooh.
I'm a rocker at heart. You can't tell by the short hair. But yep, I bought a bass guitar 3 years ago, and I actually took lessons last year for about 3 months, and I could carry a few tunes. But I'm glad I forgot to bring it over to me, because then you can't ask me to play a couple notes, because that would be embarrassing. But
Okay.
I do enjoy picking it up and playing it when I do have time, which is not very often.
We'll leave that for another interview.
Yeah.
I like it though. I love music. Music is a very important part of my life too. So, like I said, everything that I read in your book, I felt like I was talking with somebody that I just wanted to be friends with. I just wanted to, that I really connected with. So
You're very nice to say that.
let's dig in a little deeper here. One of the themes that I noticed throughout this book was forgiveness. And I was wondering if you could expound upon the benefits of grace, and in a society that right now is consumed with healthy boundaries, how is forgiveness not being a doormat or letting them get away with a free pass?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think when I even look at the examples in the book, I speak about my biological father and how he treated me, and on his deathbed, how I had a decision to make. And that was long before I was a Christian. I didn't know much about God at all at that point, but all I can say is, I guess, yeah, we definitely have a choice whether we're going to forgive or not. And I chose to forgive. But I equate it to, and we teach this in our Hurt to Hope workshops, not forgiving is like taking a spoonful of poison yourself every day and expecting the other person to die, because it's eating away at us each and every day. And I think I learned in those early years, when I say early years, my teenage years and my 20s, I had a lot of bitterness towards my biological father. And I was the person being bitter, and it was eating away my soul. And so I just think I learned that lesson the hard way over years and years and years. And I'm not perfect at it by any stretch, but I think that gave me a foundation to take into my walk when I became a disciple. Jesus says you will have trouble. And that covers a whole gamut of things, but certainly relationship challenges being at the top of the list. I won't expound on this too much, but we just had something happen last night that we just found out a few hours ago, and this has been going around Memphis. Somebody cut off our catalytic converter off our van last night, and that's going around. People are selling it for money, and it's like, what's my choice? Am I going to get angry about it? I used to, or I can be, okay, it happened. It could have been worse. Let's be grateful we have the money to go get it fixed. It looks like insurance is, I think it's looking at the gratitude side of things. I say gratitude is the great equalizer when it comes to forgiveness.
Yes. My great grandmother taught me, from a very young age, we used to sit at the bedside and count our blessings. And I really identified with that when you talked about the gratitude journals and all of that. I'm so glad that she taught me how to do that, and to find those silver linings, even in the dark and even in the storms, because I personally come from a long line of abuse and not healthy growing up, and lots of of that. And so I had a lot of forgiveness to give, and I too realized that, yes, you're right, it's so much better for us, which is why I asked that question, because I think that in this world we are presented with the idea that it's for someone else, but it really is for us. It might benefit the other person, and it may help them, and it may not. But if we don't engage in forgiveness and grace, then we don't heal, and we don't, and that's what I loved in your book. So, which leads me to my next question. So, what is your working definition, if you will, of resiliency? And how do you think it personifies our faith?
I don't know if my answer to that's going to be all that intelligent. I think I'm just a little bit blue collar and I go back to our adoption journey. People would say to us, "You guys are so faithful," and I was like, "No, not really. It's God's faithfulness is perfect." And every time we would have a situation fall through, He would open another door. And a lot of those doors weren't the answer either. But what it showed us was that He's not done. And we've got to stay in the fight. We've got to persevere. So I just look at me and my wife also is we're just going to keep going to the well until He says no. And if He says no, we're going to be, we'll have to wrestle with that like everybody else, but His will be done. But we found out during that journey, matter of fact, about halfway through the 5 years, I don't think I even talk about this in the book. I read something in Joshua 6 one time that changed me forever. You know, Joshua had already led the Israelites across the Jordan River in chapter 3. They had the stones of remembrance for each tribe. And then you fast forward a little bit and you have the walls of Jericho starting in chapter 6, right? Double fortified walls, guards on top, heavily armed. The Israelites are exhausted, but you would think their faith is at an all-time high, right? But it's the next big challenge. And we relate to that, right? It's like, oh, not another challenge. And God says to Joshua in verse 2, "See, I've already delivered the walls of Jericho into your hands." Well, put yourself in Joshua's shoes. No, all I still see is these double fortified walls and these guards up top, and they're armed. So I think it's in verse 3, God goes on to describe the specific bizarre instructions that we all know about, circling and blowing the trumpets. And it's like, but what's the lesson in that? The promise comes before the instructions sometimes.
Oh, I love that.
And I was like, you know what? We got to a point where we said, we don't have to wait until God answers our prayer to praise Him. We can praise Him right now for what He's doing. And so we learn to praise in advance of the blessing. We're like, it's not a matter if God is going to do this. It's a matter of when He does this.
Oh, amen. That kind of reminds me of the story of Marion and the women making all of the musical instruments while they were still in slavery. And then when they got to the ocean and the promised land, then they already had them. They made them in preparation. And I love that. So that's, perfect example.
I didn't know if it answered your question or not, but
you know what? It does. And resiliency is definitely kind of a current mental health buzzword right now, but it needs to be understood in a layman way, in a blue collar way, in a way that's simple for everybody to grasp. And so I like to ask everybody about resiliency and how they define it, because I think that those of us that are overcoming and growing and doing all of those things are engaging in resiliency, even if we don't identify it as that word. So, so my final question for you would be, I'm going to use another buzzword, emotional intelligence, which is something I'm really learning a lot about lately. And I definitely found your book to be highly emotionally intelligent and full of good communication. So we know that emotional intelligence and communications are keys to growing in our maturity, whether it's physically, spiritually, mentally, emotionally. So how do you think that your book could help somebody build these tools for their own emotional toolbox and be able to use them?
I hope that my vulnerability helps them. If you've ever read any of Pete Scazzario's material, Emotionally Healthy Spirituality, in my opinion, it's some of the best material on the market. And he's done offshoots of that, emotionally spiritual leader, emotionally healthy church. And then his latest one last year was emotionally healthy discipleship. But he uses the iceberg analogy, which I'm sure you've seen before, where we present 10% of our emotions, but the 90% are below the surface that we don't show.
Yes.
And I was trying to show in the book more than 10%. And I think that's how we overcome, is leading with vulnerability. If I'm vulnerable with a brother, I hope he benefits from that. And I hope he wants to be vulnerable with me, but I'm modeling it for him. And I think God blesses that. And we see that in Paul's life, and we see that in others' lives. But it's really just about being vulnerable with one another. That makes us relatable, right?
Yes, it does. I love and value authenticity and vulnerability and transparency. And those things come with emotional intelligence and learning how to communicate, get it out there. So thanks for that. And I really did feel like there were lots of nuggets throughout the book that gave us opportunities to build those tools. So I really appreciate that.
I'm sorry, can I add one thing to that? Just one quick thing. I think as Christians, we also are quick, like the rest of the world, when asked how we're doing. Forgive me just a little bit, but I'm going to say it. It's the 4-letter Christian word, fine. We say we're fine, but underneath, maybe we're not so fine. And it's okay to say, I'm not doing so well today. Here's what's on my heart. Will you pray for me? Will you pray with me? Can you walk with me through this season? It takes humility and courage and humility. I may have said humility already, but vulnerability, authenticity, the word you use, to be able to do that. And I need to practice it more and more, because when I do, I see the benefit of it. So I just wanted to add that 2 cents.
No, very, very important pieces. So having gone through these questions, we've talked about the book. What do you have in mind in the future? Do you have any future projects that you're working on? Some hopes and dreams you want to share with us?
I've always got plenty of projects going on. It took me, how many years did I say? 10, 11 years to write this book. And I think I do have another couple in me. We'll see what God has in store. But not now, not right now. Right now, besides obviously leading a church, which is very time demanding, honor to be able to do it, but it does demand a lot of your time. But I alluded earlier about Hurt to Hope, and very involved in that. And matter of fact, for your viewers, if you're in Orlando at the summit, please come see me. I'm going to be there in booth 311, and we're going to have Hurt to Hope and Hurt to Hope for Churches on display there. And we've got a great offer that we're doing there. And there's a lot of last minute preparations that are going into that the next 3 weeks before we leave out. But that's a major project. And then we have a workshop with Hurt to Hope in September. And then trying to get this into many churches. We feel like a lot of churches, we did our first one for an entire church in Jacksonville back in January. And it was just amazing how God moved among the brothers and sisters there. And so we feel like there's more churches that could benefit from this program. So that's going on, and that might be it for the immediate future, but a lot of stuff coming down the pike.
How else can people follow you on social media, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter?
Yeah, you can easily find me on Facebook under my name. For now, you can find more about Hurt to Hope on the Facebook page, Hurt, and then the number 2. Can you see my fingers? Yep. Hope. And then my YouTube channel is Steve Wormer. And then lastly, it just got launched a couple of days ago. The book has a new website called www.riversofhopebook.com. And you can learn a little more about me and a little more about the book on that website. So I am on Twitter, but I don't use it very much. So
perfect. I think you answered that great. And I guess a little shameless plug for Hurt to Hope from me is my oldest son and I did it in Seattle.
Oh, wow.
And I can honestly say it changed our lives.
Mm-hmm.
And my sons and I had been through a lot of trauma and a lot of changes that we didn't choose. and life experiences that came at us that we just didn't know what to do with. And we had a lot of hurt, and we didn't even realize how much we had. And then we both went through it, and I thought it was interesting. We each took two very different approaches. I took one of my marriages, and he took the death of his grandfather, who he was the closest with. And yet we spent the whole weekend just talking and sharing and really becoming closer together as a mother and a son, forgiving each other, loving each other unconditionally, and just amazing. And I had gone through some grief recovery types of things before, but nothing, in my personal opinion, they scratched the surface.
Yeah.
And when we did Hurt to Hope, I just had a whole new lease on my life and how I viewed things and how I grew. And I know my son did too, changed our lives. So if you get a chance, do one of those workshops and, get connected, because I love that program. So,
yeah, thank you.
Well, Steve, it was such a joy and an honor to get to chat with you, interview you, and just kind of get to know you better as a brother.
Thank you. Likewise, it's been awesome being with you.
I look forward to doing another interview with you in the future. Maybe we'll do something on Hurt to Hope or the next book. I would love that.
Yeah, that'd be great. Look forward to it.
Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. Thank you for watching my very first interview with Elite 360 and EJ's Downtime. And I wish you all the best of days. Thanks, and bye now.